If you've ever seen the Monty Python and Holy Grail movie, you might remember the scene where King Arthur and his knights are sentenced to death by the dreaded and absurd punishment of death by coconut. The condemned are tied to chairs and have coconuts dropped on their heads until they pass out. That's bad, right? Try being smashed over the head with a club until you faint. Doesn't seem so bad. Well, try being smashed over the head with a club until your skull is completely caved in, and your brain is oozing out of your ear. Yikes. We're going to take a look at executions throughout history that aren't exactly swift, painless, and quiet. You think the guillotine was brutal? Try being flayed alive with iron hooks, or slowly boiled in a cauldron of oil while still conscious. Because throughout human history, the question hasn't been, how do we kill someone quickly? It's been, how can we make them suffer until their very last breath? Welcome to the darkest corners of human justice, or rather, vengeance. This is where execution wasn't about punishment. It was about performance, terror, and turning death into theater. And compared to what you're about to hear, the guillotine starts to look almost merciful. Let's begin in medieval England, a land of stone castles, iron swords, and terrifying punishments. Among the worst of them, hanged, drawn, and quartered. It wasn't just a method of execution. It was a ritualized annihilation of the body, the name, and the soul. First, the condemned man was strapped to a wooden hurdle, dragged through filthy streets, jeered at by crowds, the ground scraping his flesh raw. Then he was hanged, but not long enough to die. Just long enough to feel his lungs burn, his eyes bulge, and the black veil of death begin to fall. Then cut down. Still alive. Next, his abdomen was slit open, his intestines pulled out and thrown into a fire. Right before his eyes, screams echoing, blood pouring. And finally, 4 horses, each one tied to a limb, then whipped, until the man was literally torn apart. Bones snapped, flesh ripped, blood splattered across the square. This is how William Wallace, the hero from Braveheart, died. Not with a sword in hand, but reduced to a bloody spectacle. And the scariest part? People clapped. Next, let's turn up the heat, literally, boiling alive. In 16th century France and England, poisoners faced a uniquely horrifying end. They weren't dropped into boiling water. That would be too quick. Instead, they were lowered into a cold cauldron of water or oil, and the fire beneath was slowly lit. As the temperature rose, blisters formed, skin peeled, and muscles shrank away from bone. They screamed, but only at first. Eventually, the pain was so intense, all they could do was convulse. The executioner stood nearby, stoking the flames, adjusting the pace. The crowd leaned in, watching flesh boil like stew. Justice. This was a public feast of pain, and the condemned, the main course. But humans didn't always need fire to torture. Sometimes they used nature. Let's travel to India, where elephants, yes, majestic royal elephants, were once used as executioners. You'd be laid on the ground, limbs spread. A handler would guide the elephant forward, slowly. Then, on command, it would raise its foot and crush your legs, not your head, not yet. One limb at a time. Crack. Then the next. Crack, bones shattered like sticks. And if the king was feeling merciful, it ended there. But if he wasn't, the elephant would tear you apart with tusks. With sheer weight, no trial, no appeal. Just tons of muscle and death. To die under an elephant wasn't just about punishment. It was about symbolism. The power of kings made monstrous and unforgettable. Now, let's move to continental Europe, where one of the most feared methods of execution awaited. The breaking wheel. A giant wooden wheel. You'd be tied to it, limbs stretched wide, vulnerable, exposed. The executioner held a heavy iron bar. And instead of stabbing, he smashed knees, elbows, ankles, shoulders, each joint shattered. Bones bent the wrong way. Screams filled the air, but the job wasn't done. They'd de-weave your mangled limbs through the spokes of the wheel, twisting you into a grotesque shape. Then the wheel was lifted upright, and there you'd hang. For hours, days. As birds picked at your wounds, dogs sniffed at your remains, and villagers passed by, pointing. Sometimes, though, you'd get a mercy blow to the heart. Usually, though, you were left to die slowly, with your own breath becoming your final tormentor. Still think the guillotine was barbaric? Now we head east to Imperial China, and to a punishment so precise, so prolonged, so devastating. It was called Linki, death by 1,000 cuts. This was reserved for the worst crimes: treason, parricide, blasphemy. The executioner was not just a killer. He was a craftsman of agony. He began with the soft spots: arms, thighs, cheeks, chest. Then came the ears, lips, eyelids. Each cut was shallow, never enough to kill. The goal wasn't death, it was duration. The victim, drugged, tied, terrified, would remain alive through dozens, sometimes hundreds of slices. If they passed out, water was thrown in their face until the final blow, a clean cut to the heart. But Linki wasn't just physical torture, it was spiritual obliteration. In traditional Chinese belief, mutilation meant your soul would wander forever. No afterlife, no reincarnation, only shame. For you and your entire family, your body was cut into pieces. Your name was erased, and your legacy dissolved into the dust of disgrace. So now, tell me, which method do you fear the most? Being torn apart by horses, boiled alive, crushed by an elephant, or sliced slowly while fully conscious? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more journeys into the dark, disturbing, and often forgotten corners of history, hit subscribe, because the past is bloodier than you think. Now let's pull back the curtain on another raw and chilling chapter of human history. From savage street executions to the slow and agonizing demise of criminals in the darkest pits of the earth, we'll explore the fates of those who dared to cross the lines of society's unforgiving justice system. Prepare yourself for a journey into the abyss,